Okay, well, we've looked at this. This was part one, the nutritional qualities, the medicinal qualities and the healing properties of sauerkraut, all taken from PubMed studies. And today we're going to look at the actual process of making sauerkraut, what actually happens to the cabbage when it's fermented, how much salt to use, what temperatures, etc., etc. As always, we're talking about the Seignelay diet. Dr. Jean Seignelay, I pronounce it Jean Seignelay, put 91 diseases into remission with his diet. And this is all about mainly about how to follow the Seignelay diet. This is my version of it, of how to follow the Seignelay diet. Okay, so we're looking at the process of making sauerkraut, and most of this information came from a booklet which you can see online. It's called the Sauerkraut Fermentation by Pedersen, an American, although with a probably Scandinavian name. And he started studying sauerkraut in the 30s, and he's really the expert. He's Pedersen all the way. The booklet you can find online, the PDF, is 68 pages. Yeah, so I've waded through that, and I've filtered out the good stuff. Yeah, the stuff that concerns us, the main stuff. Okay, so how is sauerkraut made? Well, in cabbage there are microorganisms, bacteria, millions of bacteria, and right throughout the cabbage, in all the leaves. And it's these bacteria, lactic acid bacteria, which in the presence, with some salt, if we chop the cabbage up nice and fine and add some salt, that's all we need to do, in the right temperature, the right amount of salt, it will start to ferment on its own. It will start to produce carbon dioxide, lots of things happening, all kinds of processes going on. It's a sequence. There are the first, this leuconostoc mesenteroid this is the bacteria which starts it all off, yeah? So, but these bacteria are also present, but they won't kick in, they won't start to produce until leuconostoc has produced the right conditions. So, one thing to note, you need to wash your cabbage very carefully, because on the outer leaves are all sorts of our lovely lactic acid bacteria are what's called gram-positive, and there are lots of nasty gram-negative. Gram-positive and gram-negative is just a quick way of dividing bacteria into two camps. It's you can stain the bacteria, and the walls gram-negative. The walls stain one way, gram-positive. The walls stain another way. So there's a difference in structure of the cell walls. That's all it means. But anyway, the lots of nasty bacteria on the outer leaves, which can mess up our fermentation, which can, you need to either wash the cabbage very carefully and get rid of those, or what I do is I just discard the outer leaves. Yeah. So anyway, now the bacteria, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 major kinds of bacteria. There might be yeasts in. We don't want yeasts. Yeah, yeasts can spoil the sauerkraut. You can still eat it. It's okay, but it can spoil the sauerkraut. The bacteria, our lovely lactic acid bacteria, are in two kinds. There are heterofermenters and homofermenters. Yeah, I won't make any jokes about that. The heterofermenters, and leuconostoc is a hetero, produce more than one kind of byproduct. Yeah, so the heterofermenters the leucanol stock, if we want to have lots of leucanol stock at the beginning, because that gives the cabbage its really good flavour, because it produces lactic acid and acetic acid, okay, and this will grow well at low temperatures. So the other bacteria are a bit more fussy. They need higher temperatures, and they need leucanol stock to have produced favourable conditions for them to take over. So the leucanol stock starts, and how fast it goes depends on the temperature, but more or less in 3 to 5 days, leucanol stock has done its work, and the others can take over. Yeah. So what does it do? It produces carbon dioxide and acids to quickly lower the pH. So it quickly makes the cabbage acid, provides, and the carbon dioxide replaces air and produces anaerobic conditions, which are ideal for the bacteria. They will grow in in aerobic conditions, but they prefer anaerobic conditions. The anaerobic conditions stabilize vitamin C and the color of the cabbage. So, leucanol stick produces acids, alcohol esters, and other growth products that impair desirable flavor. And this is all from Peterson, okay? So this is all in his booklet. Excess sugars are broken down to mannitol, dextran, and it ferments glucose to 45% lactic acid, 25% carbon dioxide, 25% acetic acid, ethyl alcohol, arabinose, and xylose. Arabinose and xylose to 50% lactic acid, 50% acetic acid, and as I said earlier, it works at low temperatures. So then, once the leucanol stock has kicked it off, lactobacillus brevis can kick in. This again is a hetero-fermenter, so produces more than one thing. Yeah. For example, the lactobacillus plantarum, which generally kicks in at the end, is a homo-fermenter, and that just produces tons of lactic acid, that will make your sauerkraut. That will ferment the sauerkraut very fast in hot conditions, but doesn't taste so good. It hasn't got all these lovely flavors in we get from leucanol stock and from lactobacillus brevis as well. This gives nice flavor. So same end products from fermenting sugar, but it makes 50% more acid. So it works similarly to leucanol stock, but it's more fastidious in its growth requirements, and it starts after 3 or 5 days in ideal conditions. If it's very low temperatures, leucanol stock carries on, but these can't really kick in at very low temperatures. We'll get into temperatures in a minute. So Pediococcus cerevisiae, homo-fermenter, and 95% of the sugars are converted to lactic acid. And again, very fastidious in growth requirements. So it needs the right kind of shred of cabbage, nice fine shred, the optimum amount of salt and optimum temperatures, and it needs to have had leucanol stock kicking off. Lactobacillus plantarum, this gives the highest yield of the group, 3 to 4 times more acid than leucanol stock, but it's all lactic acid. So, now the growth of each species depends on initial presence in the cut cabbage. So it's got to be there in the cabbage to start with, but it generally is, I think. I don't think we need to worry about that. The amount of sugar in the cabbage, the sugars in the cabbage. So there are lots of different kinds of cabbage. So some cabbages might produce different kinds of sauerkraut, and the amount of salt and the fineness of cut, those are all that influences the growth of each of these. So let's look at optimum temperatures and optimum amount of salt. So optimum conditions are 18 degrees C, okay? Where I am now, we're in winter now, and I'm struggling to get my sauerkraut, up to 18 degrees C. I think I found a way around that. And by the way, lots of cabbage grows in India. You can get cabbage all the year round in India, but they've tried growing sauerkraut on a commercial scale in India, and it didn't really work because it's so hot. Yeah, so you just get it doesn't really work. You get all the you have to inoculate it. You'd have to inoculate it, and then you get lots of lactobacillus plantarum. Get lots of lactic acid. It's got no real good flavour that you get from the leuconostic. But if you want to make it at home, if you're in India and you want to make it at home, I've got the solution, yeah? Get a cool box. And in part 3, we're going to make the sauerkraut. We're going to actually make the sauerkraut. And I'll show you how to control the temperature with a cool box, yeah? So, so if you're in India, sauerkraut, really great for your health. And especially if if you've got anything wrong with you, MS, or you're depressed, or something like that, or fibromyalgia, one of the diseases that cellulate healed or put into remission, and you want to follow the cellulate diet, I highly recommend making sauerkraut and use a cool box so you can control the temperature. I'll show you how to do it. Anyway, optimum conditions 18 degrees C. I'm in the UK, so that would be sort of late spring or late summer, around 18 degrees C. Obviously, if you've got central heating, you can control the temperature. So 65 degrees Fahrenheit for our American friends, 18 degrees C for us Europeans, and 25% salt. No more. You don't want less salt or more salt. It's very important to get the optimum amount of salt. If you don't put enough salt in, and by the way, this is what they call canonical sauerkraut, yeah? We're not inoculating it, we're just making sauerkraut with cutting the cabbage, slicing the cabbage, and we're adding salt. That's all we're doing in this, yeah? This is called the canonical method of making sauerkraut, the proper way. So, if you put too much salt in, it doesn't really work. It smothers the lactic acid bacteria. They can't really take off, and it tastes horrible. It doesn't really go off, but you don't really want to eat it if it's too much salt. So at very high temperatures, this is all according to Peterson, yeah. So this is you can take this as read. This is from Peterson, the Bible, yeah. So at high temperature, 90 degrees Fahrenheit for our American friends, 32 degrees centigrade for us Europeans. The fermentation is very fast. That's a high temperature. Yeah, in the UK, we would really struggle to get up to 32 degrees C. Yeah, it would have to be a heat wave. Yeah, and the kraut is finished in 8 to 10 days. But it's not very good kraut. Most acid is produced by plantarum, this last one, and pediococcus is low in vitamin C, and it will be mainly lactic acid. At low temperature, 7 degrees C, which is very, very, very cool. That would be, in the UK at the moment we're about 7 degrees in midday. Yeah, this is November. And we're about 7 degrees C at midday on a good day. In morning and evening, night time, it's about 4 degrees and can go down to freezing. So, most dust, very slow, and it'll be all leuconostoc, which will grow very slowly. Brevis and pediococcus can't grow well at all. So, if you're making your sauerkraut in the middle of winter and you haven't got any heating in your house, you're going to have to wait 6 months until things warm up a bit, and the sauerkraut gets finished. Again, we can control it. We're going to make some sauerkraut, and I'm going to show you how to control the temperature with a cool box. Yeah. So although it's called a cool box, we can put some things in it. You know, it's like a giant vacuum flask. Basically, it keeps, you know, it insulates. So we can put things, you know, to get the temperature up, yeah, as well as down. So, yeah, so we can use a cool box to do that. So I will show you that in part 3, where we actually make the sauerkraut. Peterson goes into it in great detail. The long and the short of it is that if you for example, if you're making sauerkraut and you use a bit from a previous batch, and mix it in, which I used to do actually until I did all this research, and I realized that, you know, I wasn't getting very good. You know, the sauerkraut would be made quickly and it would work, well, you know, okay, but it wouldn't have these subtle flavors, you know, these flavors that Luca Nostock gives it. So Peterson's verdict is, you know, inoculation doesn't really work. But then again, this is my Bible as well, Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon, and I follow her recipe for making sauerkraut basically, and she says to use whey, and she gives you the recipe to make whey, and basically you put, I will show you this, we put some yogurt with live culture in, and it separates into cottage cheese and whey, and we can use the whey to start the fermentation, and I think that works. I don't think it, you know, it's lactic acid bacteria, but it's not the right kind of lactic acid bacteria. It's lactic acid bacteria, you know, for making yogurt. So I don't think that those bacteria proliferate. But I think they're enough to. I think it's enough to start it off. I think the whey, the acid in the whey, you know, gets the acid down. She says, you know, you can do that to use less salt. So I made some recently using her method, and I made some canonical sauerkraut using more salt, and the stuff with more salt is not really nice. You know, the Sally Fallon's sauerkraut is better. So there we go. So next one is we're actually making the sauerkraut. Okay.